Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, female suicide bomber wreaks havoc in Damaturu cattle market in Yobe State, detonates explosive device, leaving 17 people dead. People's Democratic Party leadership says Buhari's visit to Washington, D.C. is a fruitless exercise, but the APC tells Nigerians to expect results soon. Energy experts gather in London and recommend power overhaul for the continent. And Turkey calls a meeting with NATO to discuss military operations against Islamic State group and Kurdish separatists. We begin tonight with a bomb blast in Damaturu, the Yobe State capital, perpetrated by a 10-year-old girl. The suicide bomber was said to have detonated an improvised explosive device at the main entrance of the Sunday market in the city. A state police command confirmed the incident, revealing that 5 units of undetonated IEDs were recovered from the scene of the blast, while the wounded are being treated in hospital. The explosion comes 6 days after suicide bombers detonated an IED at a police checkpoint in the state's capital.
A gruesome sight at the emergency ward of the Sani Abacha Hospital in Damaturu. 19 are confirmed dead in the latest attacks in Damaturu. 47 others injured are being treated here by doctors and nurses, as loved ones also joined in to offer help of any kind. The blast, a stark reminder that the unconventional war persists in Nigeria's northeast, saw the old, the young, all devastated, as the Commissioner of Police, Marcus Danladi, who was at the church service when the incident happened, cautioned the public to always be vigilant. Talking to us on telephone, he said,
"The market is a Sunday market, and people go there to buy cows and rams, but before you are allowed into the market, you're screened by security forces on the queue. It was on the queue the girl detonated the bomb. 5 other unexploded IEDs were found on the little girl."
Attacks such as this has happened once too many in the past 2 months since the President Muhammadu Buhari's administration came on board. The strategy of the Boko Haram sect has changed to solo suicide bombers using children. Perhaps a change of tactics by the government forces is what is needed to checkmate what many say is evil in the land.
And worried by the incessant attacks by terrorists, Yobe State's Governor Ibrahim Gaidam has called on security agencies in the state to step up surveillance and the people to remain calm and vigilant on the happenings around them. He also advised residents to support and report suspicious persons or movements to the nearest security point or jurisdiction. The governor has commiserated with families of those who lost members in what he called the horrific bomb attack at the Damaturu cattle market, saying the death toll has risen to 19. Staying with the violence, victims of the blast in northern Nigeria since 2010 are demanding access to the support fund set up by the government in July 2014 to cater for victims of insurgency. The chairman of the victims under the umbrella group, Victims Association of Nigeria, Mr. Kayode Oladile, said hundreds of survivors of the blast who sustained different levels of injuries are still unable to get proper Medicare years after the blast, despite the availability of 80 billion naira raised for the fund last year. However, the executive director of the Victim Support Fund, Dr. Sunday Ochoche, told Channels Television that the actual amount raised was 54 billion naira, of which 24 has been redeemed, with a key focus to rehabilitation of women and children.
That the present administration, under the leadership of new President Muhammadu Buhari, open up an inquiry into the status of the Victim Support Fund established in July 2014 and ascertain the whereabouts of the over 80 billion naira raised for the support of
This is the latest from survivors of bomb blasts that have occurred in the north of the country. Many who sustained different degrees of injuries, which they say have not been properly treated, leaving many of them still fighting for their lives.
The government is not spend a dime on any of us, and some of us are dying, some are still in the hospital.
Their demand for access to the Victims Fund, however, met a brick wall. As the chief executive of the fund, Dr. Ochoche, says their focus now is on women and children, with over 21 billion naira left in their coffers out of 24 billion naira redeemed pledges. 2 billion was spent on Safe School Initiative, 250 million naira on humanitarian aid. No figure was given for administration.
The board and the committee of the fund has decided that for a start, we are going to focus on issues of women and children. And in focusing on women and children, we will be focusing on issues of economic empowerment, issues of livelihood, issues of education for children, issues of psychosocial support for women and children. These will be the key areas of our focus.
The National Human Rights Commission Chairman, Professor Chidi Odinkalo, however, disagrees, saying the administration of such a fund without the involvement of victims and with persistent complaints from those for whom the fund was set up subverts the mission of the fund.
Any effort to deploy the mission of the Victim Support Fund that detracts from that group noun and the verb that gives meaning to it, in my view, subverts the mission of the fund and also does serious damage to the credibility of government and takes victims as an expendable group. That is unacceptable.
All these victims are asking for is that their medical bills be taken care of and the lives of survivors saved, especially considering that more victims are affected with every blast which still occurs till date. The Human Rights Commission chairman said 24 billion naira is a huge amount of money, of which only a fraction will cater for all such victims. Yes, ma'am. Omelogo Nadi, Channels Television News.
In the meantime, the army in Borno State says it has recaptured Dekwa Township in Borno. A spokesperson for the division, Colonel Tukuru Guso, said during a news conference today that as part of the ongoing military offensive, the army exchanged gunfire with the bandits and Dekwa was finally liberated. Dekwa fell owing to the combined efforts of the Nigerian Air Force, Alpha jets and surveillance aircraft. The air bombardment efforts paved way for the army to move in. Colonel Guso says the area is now being occupied by the army. And to another sad incident, this time it's happened in Jos Plateau State. More than 14 people were killed following a poisonous chlorine inhalation. According to eyewitnesses, the explosion happened at a water treatment plant in Jos, resulting in the explosion where people inhaled gas, and while they were asleep earlier this morning, over 100 people were affected. 15 of them or thereabouts have been killed and others are in hospital. This is Dogon Karfe village in Jos South local government area of Plateau State, north-central Nigeria. A few meters away is the water treatment plant where the chlorine explosion happened. Residents of this community could not have imagined they would one day wake up to find some of their neighbors, friends and family dead. The leakage of one of the cylinders, which has chemicals for treatment of water, exploded, resulting in the death of several people who inhaled the gas, while others were hospitalized.
The incident happened between the hours of 11 and 12, and we were called to come and see how to come with medical aid. We came here from that moment. We had a few number of them, up to 57. Later on, right now the number I can tell you is 116 that came up. Now we are still managing them. There's no None of them is very, very critical, and I think we have the ability to contain the problem.
Yeah, our investigation revealed that one of the spent gas cylinders leaked, but the cause of the leak we may not be able to say now. And because the gas leaked, it went into the environment. People who were sleeping, and gas has no boundary, they inhaled the gas, and many people were killed as a result of that.
At the hospital, victims are receiving treatment, but for one woman, treatment is not enough. Her voice lifts across the ward as she prays for the resurrection of this man, believed to be her husband. But the trade blame has begun. The state government, in its defense, says the area is not residential.
People were not supposed to have built their houses around us, around the treatment plant. And we have the same issue around our dams. People do irrigation work, do some construction work, and even mold their bricks around the dams, which is hazardous to the water to do. But the government will definitely have to make a pronouncement, considering the fact that we have lost lives in these incidents.
In the meantime, the President, Muhammadu Buhari, has ordered a thorough investigation into the gas explosion and commiserated with the affected families and governments of the state. The President insists an investigation into the incident is necessary to avoid a recurrence. In part two, after the break, residents of Port Harcourt lament the state of their roads. That's in a moment. Please join us again.